Bediüzzaman Said Nursi was born in 1877 in eastern Turkey and died in 1960 in Urfa in Turkey. Readers may refer to his biography for details of his long, and exemplary life, which spanned the last decades of the Ottoman Empire, its collapse after the First World War and the setting up of the Republic, then the 25 years of Republican People's Party rule, well known for the measures taken against Islam, followed by the 10 years of Democrat rule, when conditions eased a little for Bediüzzaman. Bediüzzaman displayed an extraordinary intelligence, and ability to learn from an early age, completing the normal course of madrasa, religious school education at the early age of 14, when he obtained his diploma. He became famous for both his prodigious memory, and his unbeaten record in debating with other religious scholars. Another characteristic Bediüzzaman displayed from an early age was an instinctive dissatisfaction with the existing education system, which when older he formulated into comprehensive proposals for its reform. The heart of these proposals was the bringing together and joint teaching of the traditional religious sciences, and the modern sciences, together with the founding of a university in the eastern provinces of the empire, the Medresetüz Zehra, where this and his other proposals would be put into practice. In 1907 his endeavors in this field took him to Istanbul and an audience with Sultan Abdülhamid. Although subsequently he twice received funds for the construction of his university, and its foundations were laid in 1913, it was never completed due to war and the vicissitudes of the times. Contrary to the practice of religious scholars at that time, Bediüzzaman himself studied and mastered almost all the physical and mathematical sciences, and later studied philosophy, for he believed that it was only in this way that Islamic theology, kalam could be renewed and successfully answer the attacks to which the Quran and Islam were then subject. In the course of time, the physical sciences had been dropped from madrasa education, which had contributed directly to the Ottoman decline relative to the advance of the West. Now, in the 19th and early 20th centuries, Europe had gained dominance over the Islamic world, and in efforts to extend its dominance, was attacking the Quran and Islam in the name of science and progress in particular, falsely claiming them to be incompatible. Within the empire too was a small minority which favored adopting Western philosophy and civilization. Thus, all Bediüzzaman's endeavor was to prove and demonstrate the falseness of these accusations, and that far from being incompatible with science and progress, the Quran was the source of true progress and civilization, and in addition, since this was the case, Islam would dominate the future, despite its relative decline and regression at that time. The years up to the end of the First World War were the final decades of the Ottoman Empire and were, in the words of Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, the period of the Old Said. In addition to his endeavors in the field of learning, he served the cause of the empire and Islam through active involvement in social life and the public domain. In the war, he commanded the militia forces on the Caucasian front against the invading Russians, for which he is later awarded a war medal. To maintain the morale of his men he himself disdained to enter the trenches in spite of the constant shelling, and it was while withstanding the overwhelming assaults of the enemy that he wrote his celebrated Qur'anic commentary, Signs of Miraculousness, dictating to a scribe while on horseback. Stating that the Quran encompasses the sciences which make known the physical world, the commentary is an original and important work which in Bediüzzaman's words, forms a sort model for commentaries he hoped would be written in the future, which would bring together the religious and modern sciences in the way he proposed. Bediüzzaman was taken prisoner in March 1916 and held in Russia for 2 years before escaping in early 1918, and returning to Istanbul via Warsaw, Berlin, and Vienna. The defeat of the Ottomans saw the end of the empire and its dismemberment, and the occupation of Istanbul and parts of Turkey by foreign forces. These bitter years saw also the transformation of the old Said into the new Said, the second main period of Bediüzzaman's life. Despite the acclaim he received and services he performed as a member of the Darul Hikmatil Islami, a learned body attached to the Sheikhul Islam's office, and combating the British, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi underwent a profound mental and spiritual change in the process of which he turned his back on the world. Realizing the inadequacy of the human science and philosophy he had studied as a means of reaching the truth, he took the revealed Quran as his sole guide. In recognition of his services to the independent struggle, Bediüzzaman was invited to Ankara by Mustafa Kemal, but on arrival there, found that at the very time of the victory of the Turks and Islam, atheistic ideas were being propagated among the deputies and officials, and many were lax in performing their religious duties. He published various works that successfully countered this. Remaining some 8 months in Ankara, Bediüzzaman understood the way Mustafa Kemal and the new leaders were going to take, and on the one hand that he could not work alongside them, and on the other that they were not to be combated in the realm of politics. When offered various posts and benefits by Mustafa Kemal, he declined them and left Ankara for Van, where he withdrew into a life of worship and contemplation. He was seeking the best way to proceed. Within a short time, Bediüzzaman's fears about the new regime began to be realized. The first steps were taken towards secularization, and reducing the power of Islam within the state, and even its eradication from Turkish life. In early 1925, there was a rebellion in the east in which Bediüzzaman played no part, but as a consequence of which was sent into exile in western Anatolia along with many hundreds of others. Thus unjustly began 25 years of exile, imprisonment, and unlawful oppression for Bediüzzaman. He was sent to Barla, a tiny village in the mountains of Isparta province. However, the attempt to entirely isolate and silence him had the reverse effect, for Bediüzzaman was both prepared and uniquely qualified to face the new challenge. These years saw the writing of the Risale-i Nur, which silently spread and took root, combating in the most constructive way the attempt to uproot Islam, and the unbelief and materialist philosophy it was hoped to instill in the Muslim people of Turkey. As the new Sayyid, Bediüzzaman had immersed himself in the Quran, searching for a way to relate its truths to modern man. In Barla in his isolation he began to write treatises explaining and proving these truths, for now the Quran itself and its truths were under direct attack. The first of these was on the resurrection of the dead, which in a unique style, proves bodily resurrection rationally, where even the greatest scholars previously had confessed their impotence. He described the method employed in this as consisting of 3 stages. First, God's existence is proved, and his names and attributes, then the resurrection of the dead is constructed on these and proved. With these writings, Bediüzzaman opened up a new, direct way to reality, haqiqat, and knowledge of Allah, which he described as the highway of the Quran and way of the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessing upon him, through the legacy of prophethood, which gains for those who follow it true and certain belief. He did not ascribe the writings to himself, but said they proceeded from the Quran itself, were rays shining out of from its truths. Thus, rather than being a Quranic commentary which expounds all its verses giving the immediate reasons for their revelation and the apparent meanings of the words and sentences, the Risale-i Nur is what is known as a Manavi tefsir, or commentary which expounds the meaning of the Quranic truths. The verses mostly expounded in the Risale-i Nur are those concerned with the truths of belief, such as the divine names and attributes and the divine activity in the universe, the divine existence and unity, resurrection, prophethood, divine determining or destiny, and man's duties of worship. Bediüzzaman explains how the Quran addresses all men in every age in accordance with the degree of their understanding and development. It has a face that looks to each age. The Risale-i Nur, then, explains that face of the Quran which looks to this age. We shall now look at further aspects of the Risale-i Nur related to this point. In numerous of its verses, the Holy Quran invites man to observe the universe and reflect on the divine activity within it. Following just this method, Bediüzzaman provides proofs and explanations for the truths of belief. He likens the universe to a book, and looking at it in the way shown by the Quran, that is, reading it for its meaning, learns of the divine names and attributes and other truths of belief. The book's purpose is to describe its author and maker. Beings become evidences and signs to their creator. Thus, an important element in the way of the Risale-i Nur is reflection or contemplation tafakkur, reading the Book of the Universe in order to increase in knowledge of Allah and to obtain true and certain belief in all the truths of belief. Bediüzzaman demonstrates that the irrefutable truths, such as divine unity, arrived at in this way are the only rational and logical explanation of the universe, and making comparisons with naturalist and materialist philosophy which have used science's findings about the universe to deny those truths, show the concepts on which they are based, such as causality and nature, to be irrational and logically absurd. Indeed, far from contradicting them, in uncovering the order and working of the universe, science broadens and deepens knowledge of the truths of belief. In the Risale-i Nur many descriptions of the divine activity in the universe are looked at through the eyes of science, and reflect Bediüzzaman's knowledge of it. The Risale-i Nur shows that there is no contradiction or conflict between religion and science. In addition, all these matters discussed in the Risale-i Nur are set out as reasoned arguments and proved according to logic. All the most important of the truths of belief are proved so clearly that even unbelievers can see their necessity. And so too, inspired by the Quran, even the most profound and inaccessible truths are made accessible by means of comparisons, which bring them close to the understanding like telescopes, so that they are readily understandable by ordinary people and those with no previous knowledge of these questions. Another aspect of the Risale-i Nur related to the face of the Quran which looks to this age, is that it explains everything from the point of view of wisdom, that is, as is mentioned again below, it explains the purpose of everything. It considers things from the point of view of the divine name of All-Wise. Also, following this method, in the Risale-i Nur Bediüzzaman solved many mysteries of religion, such as bodily resurrection and divine determining and man's will, and the riddle of the constant activity in the universe and the motion of particles, before which man relying on his own intellect and philosophy had been impotent. While in Barla, Bediüzzaman put the treatise on resurrection and the pieces that followed it together in the form of a collection and gave it the name of Sazlar the Words. The Words was followed by Mektubat letters, a collection of 33 letters of varying lengths from Bediüzzaman to his students. And this was followed by Bilamular the Flashes collection, and Swalar the Rays, which was completed in 1949. Together with these are the 3 collections of additional letters, for each of Bediüzzaman's main places of exile, Barla Lahakasi, Kastamonu Lahakasi, and Emirdag Lahakasi. The way the Risale-i Nur was written and disseminated was unique, like the work itself. Bediüzzaman would dictate at speed to a scribe, who would write down the piece in question with equal speed. The actual writing was very quick. Bediüzzaman had no books for reference and the writing of religious works was of course forbidden. They were all written therefore in the mountains and out in the countryside. Handwritten copies were then made. These were secretly copied out in the houses of the Risale-i Nur students, as they were called, and passed from village to village, and then from town to town, till they spread throughout Turkey. Only in 1946 were Risale-i Nur students able to obtain duplicating machines, while it was not till 1956 that various parts were printed on modern presses in the new, Latin, script. The figure given for hand-written copies is 600,000. Besides these powerful writings themselves, a major factor in the success of the movement may be attributed to the very method Bediüzzaman had chosen, which may be summarized with 2 phrases. Manevi jihad, that is, jihad of the word, or non-physical jihad, and positive action. For Bediüzzaman considered the true enemies in this age of science, reason, and civilization to be materialism and atheism, and their source, materialist philosophy. Thus just as he combated and, utterly defeated, these with the reasoned proofs of the Risale-i Nur, so through strengthening the belief of Muslims and raising it to the level of true verified belief, the Risale-i Nur was the most effective barrier against the corruption of society caused by these enemies. In order to be able to pursue the jihad of the word, Bediüzzaman insisted that his students avoided any use of force and disruptive action. Through positive action, and the maintenance of public order and security, the damage caused by the forces of unbelief could be repaired by the healing truths of the Quran. And this is the way they have adhered to.